Cool.
Hey, this is Vulgar Display of Podcast, and I am your special guest host, Joey O'Farrell. We're here at the barn today, and obviously we're promoting Surfside Presents BOB-A-RINO'S Class of '03 reunion, featuring Last Flight Home reunion, Bi-Level reunion, and Moon from The Point, from Goldfinger, from Greek Fire, from X Story of the Year, all those bands. Jeff from Not Waving's new band, Symphony of Punches, and one band I'm really excited about, old friend of mine, somebody who I've known for 25, 30 years, a very talented musician, my good friend Zach Berry, and Zach's brand new band, Enemy Airship. I don't know if it's a new band, is it?
Not new, but it's my latest band, my
Okay.
newest band, I guess. Yeah.
Well, welcome to the podcast, Zach. Thanks for doing this, and we're so
Oh, yeah.
excited to have you be a part of the show.
I'm stoked too. Thanks for asking me to do it. Yeah, I mean, Barbarino's I think probably my first experience with DIY shows was seeing Ash Abishan's brother, his band play in the back of Barbarino's at Country Days. I think it was like them and Crip 33 or something, and just being like, holy shit, this is possible. Like, you can just throw a show wherever and people will show up and get down. So, like, just going to shows there, playing shows there whenever I was a teenager, like, just absolutely seminal experience in my life. So to be a part of celebrating that, and just Bob's generosity for opening up his business to a bunch of sweaty loud kids is an honor. So thank you for asking me.
You know, it's funny that you bring that show up because that's really the first show that I remember at Bob's, because I remember Andy's bands were always so good.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
they would open for like Alkaline Trio and Lawrence Arms and all these bands in the St. Louis at the side door. And then they came to Farmington and played in like a truck bed. And I remember seeing Crip 33 for the first time. And then you had like Grinch and Shiver and Thrust and all these like new metal kind of, I don't know what you would call that genre bands. It's so funny to me. I think about this a lot, actually. It's like, so we did that show. They did that show. I wasn't a part of that. I can't remember who did that show. But I remember thinking to myself, like 2 years later, it took us 2 years to realize that we should not have this in the middle of a gravel pit. And we had this nice fenced in like area where everything was flat and it was like concrete. And we finally were like, oh, we should just do it here. This makes way more sense.
yeah,
Because I my first show I ever did was in that back lot. And I think it was muddy, and I bought a bunch of plywood, and like we had like Fighting 407 and a few other bands. A bunch of bands canceled. But yeah, it took us way too long to figure out that we should probably just go play in the patio.
yeah. I mean, I remember at least one show where there was like a band playing on the patio, and while they were like playing, someone was setting up inside. I remember playing in both and like going back and forth between them. This may have been like early days type of stuff, but I was trying to remember too, like who was setting some of this stuff up before we were playing these shows or setting these shows up. Was it TJ?
It might have been TJ. I could see that. But then there's always like the guys in Grinch and Calvin and
Yeah,
Tony Boyd, I think was his name.
yeah, yeah,
And yeah, there was just a lot of people. I think it wasn't like one sole person. It was just kind of everybody getting together and trying to figure out, hey, how can we play a show? Where can we play a show at? But
yeah.
I want to talk about your bands, but let's start with Enemy Airship and kind of just tell us like how long Enemy Airship's been together, what you guys are doing, any new records you guys got coming out, any stuff like that.
Yeah. So we've been playing in this configuration since like 2012. So for a minute. But yeah, I mean it's also indie rock. I guess that's a pretty gigantic umbrella. I'm not sure really how to describe the music because we kind of jump around genres a little bit. During our early days, people would throw the term shoegaze around a lot. I don't know that that fit then. It definitely doesn't fit now, but we've just been, yeah, I don't know. We were a Columbia band for a long time. We all live in St. Louis now. We've been working on we put out a record in 2000 or 2023. We're working on a new one we're going to put out next year. It's probably going to be self-released, but another full length. Yeah, I don't even know what to say about it. We were trying to write a bio to submit to a festival a few weeks ago, and I was just like, I don't even. How do you talk about your own music in a way that is like not like bloviating, or also you're just like too close to it to say? So I'm probably the worst person to ask.
I would, I've listened to it quite a bit, and like I would say the shoegaze thing, it definitely has like a bit of shoegaze in it, but it's also got these, these beautiful vocals, and it's just so easy to listen to,
Thank you.
and I think that it's got a little bit of everything, like a little easy listening, a little like, shoegaze, like you said. And I think that it's very easy for anybody to like this kind of music. And when me and Rusty were talking about like, we need another band for this show, Rusty from Last Flight Home,
Yeah, yeah. I love
you were,
Rust.
you were the first person that came up and he was like, I love Zach's new record. You got to listen to his band. And I really wasn't like, I didn't really know much about what you were doing at the time. And I, before I listened to it, I said, yeah, I trust him. I know what kind of musician that guy is. And I went and listened to this stuff right away though. And I was pretty blown away. Like, I think people at the show are going to be pretty blown away by how great this band is.
I, I mean, thank you. I hope so. I hope it's not a huge letdown.
No, I don't think it will be.
I know that it is kind of like we're sort of the odd band. We're not a heavy band. We're not, but hopefully there's going to be somebody who finds something in it to like there. I think that there will be. Um, yeah. So Rusty is a huge sweetheart, and I remember Chris. Remember Chris Creselius, the
Of
guitarist
course,
in my
yeah.
band.
Oh, I was going to bring him up. Don't you
Yeah,
worry.
yeah. So we had music theory class. Like you take classes at Mac like half days. Our senior year, some people would, and we would go and take music theory class and sight singing. And we had those classes with Ben and Rusty both, and we were. I don't know. I knew those guys from playing shows with them, but never like got to talk to them and just like what a bunch of sweethearts. I love those guys so much. Just became good friends with them there, and I haven't talked to Ben in ages, but I've talked to Rusty just via email, like old fashioned email, a bunch about just record pressing. I think for his own stuff in the last year or two. I don't know. Time is a little bit weird and dilated, and I don't know how long ago anything actually was. Everything feels simultaneously like a month ago and 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's funny because I didn't, when I was talking to Rusty about you, I didn't even know you guys knew each other.
Yeah, yeah.
He brought you up and I was like, oh man, yeah, like of course. Like this makes total sense that you guys are friends. Um, so kind of let's go back a little bit. We went to high school together. We're the exact same age. I've known you
Lots
since
about
like
too. Yeah.
I've known you since basically middle school. I've been to your mom's house. We've hung out a bunch. We both love the state.
Yeah.
Um,
Hell
you
yeah.
know, and you were in a band called 5 Seconds of Goodwill. We were in high school, and this
Terrible
was,
band name.
you know what? It's
It,
memorable,
I wince every time that I have to say it.
but that band for that time, even for now, I think was just such an underrated band. And you were in a band, like you said before, you were in an indie rock band around all these metal bands and punk rock bands and all this other things. And you never looked down on anybody or stuck your nose up. You always just were there to play the music.
Yeah.
You've been a musician since you were a kid.
Yeah, we played shows with all these people. I
Oh,
remember like
go ahead.
most of the shows we played were probably with Toxic Trends, which was like, just straight up punk and
Straight up street punk. It was
yeah,
street punk. It was the dirtiest punk rock you could play.
yeah.
And I remember you guys playing Music Makers with them, and Music Makers was very excited about 5 Seconds Ago Well, and they were not so excited about Toxic Trends playing.
Well, we're a package deal, so
I love it. You always, you know what? And like, even though you weren't the punkest, like your sound wasn't very punk rock, I always thought you guys were really punk rock, just the way you treated other bands. And you played all those garages, you played Music Makers, you played the barns. Like going back to those days, who were some of the bands that you played with that you remember?
yeah. So our second show ever, our friend Dan would throw shows in his mom's, like, I guess it's a barn, but really it's just like a glorified, very large garage. And like the summer of 1999, I worked at Dairy Queen for 2 weeks, just long enough to buy the shittiest PA system of all time and set it up out there. And we would throw shows. Our second show ever was Pennies for Allah. That's where I actually met some of these dudes. And so yeah, like we would play with bands that were heavier than us, bands that were, definitely stylistically different. I don't know if their fans liked us very much, but like, I feel like as a musician, you just kind of end up liking all kinds of music, even if you don't necessarily play that kind of music. But also at the time, like, um, Chris and I were both listening to a lot of like second wave emo. Like, I was listening to Braid pretty much constantly before we were a band. And like Ash Abishan's brother kept giving Ash music and Ash would burn shit for me. So I'm like driving around listening to Hot Rod Circuit and then going and making like, indie wuss music. And so I'm like listening to all this stuff and appreciating it. And then like playing with bands that are more overtly influenced by this kind of stuff. And so like it might not be immediately obvious, but like there's definitely some punk in all of our, musical DNA.
I would definitely say that I'm a big Hey Mercedes fan, a big Braid fan. Obviously, I lean more towards Hey Mercedes because that was like when I discovered them.
I mean, Bob Nana, you can't go wrong with anything Bob Nana
No,
does.
you
So.
can't go wrong with anything Bob Nana does. But you kind of always reminded me of him. You always had kind of a Bob Nana sound to you, and not like you were copying him because he's got his own thing going on. But
I mean, I was copying Bob Nana. Let's be real. I remember also like the year that I got my driver's license, I put Frames and Canvas like on a tape, on a cassette tape, and I would just drive around listening to it all the time. And then I like somehow found Bob Nana's email address and decided to email him. And I was like so stoked that he emailed me back. He was so nice. He's a hero of mine. I love that.
have you ever gotten to meet him before?
No, never.
Okay. Um, a buddy of mine has a company with Bob Nana.
No shit.
It's called Downright. They get people from well-known bands to write songs for people's birthdays and anniversaries, stuff like that. So Mark Rose from Spitalfield and Bob Nana own it.
That's awesome.
It's a really cool company. So
That's
yeah,
also just a very sweet thing, and it doesn't shock me that Bob Nana is a part of a project like that.
yeah, I totally agree with you. I've got to do a couple shows with him, and he's always been very kind and nice. And like just like you, I grew up listening to him, and I was just so blown away because that band was so different to me than anybody else. Like the way he wrote songs, it was just different. You never heard people write songs like in that structure before. Or
Yeah, well,
lyrics.
and just like the dueling, like just like guitar theatrics between him and Chris was hugely inspirational to what I was trying to do and probably not doing quite right. But like, yeah, me and Chris were definitely listening to that and like Built to Spill and those were sort of our guitar heroes at the time, like Doug Marsh from Built to Spill and even like Isaac Brock from Modest Mouse and that kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know.
I would say that you guys had your music brain as kids, being 15, 16. You had a very mature music brain. You were listening to music that kids couldn't even relate to back then at that age. So I think that contributed to you guys playing more kind of adult music and not so much like we're just gonna like in this really like deep stuff that like people who are between the ages of 25 and 35 love. And you guys did such a great job with it, and that's why you're still playing good music today.
Thank you. Thank you. Um, I mean, we were definitely listening to like old people music for sure, but also just like everything a little bit. I remember at the time too, our we had a friend, he went away to college. He was like got a job at the college radio station and he would come home with just binders full of burned copies of shit that was like charting on the college radio stations. So it was like just around the Napster era, but not quite, and definitely like we had dial-up, so we weren't getting full albums very easily. And he would bring us all this stuff, and so we're just like mainlining, you know, all the merge record catalogs that at a time whenever that wasn't just everywhere. The internet wasn't everywhere. People didn't have access to everything, so that definitely helped to have someone bringing us that stuff. And really just like we mentioned Ash Abishan's brother, but just him kind of like showing Ash stuff and Ash showing us stuff, like people's older brothers and older friends showing us cool music got us into all that stuff. So if there's anyone to thank for that, it's definitely those people.
Yeah, I had an older brother who was really into like a lot of really cool punk rock stuff, and then I met Ash, and Ash drove. He was like the first of us to drive. So
Yeah.
he went and hung out with him. You listened, like, I remember listening to like some of my favorite bands with him, like Propagandhi and the Ataris. And, he also really liked ska a lot, which I wasn't huge into ska, but, yeah, I learned a lot for music from him, from my brother. And then I remember, one thing I remember about you, I don't know why this, like, I keep this memory, but it's like we were probably 17, 16 years old. And I kind of thought you were a music snob. I thought you were like into what you want. And I remember I put in No Use for a Name. I don't even know if you know who they are, but
Yeah.
I put them in and you listened to them and you were like, and I think this guy is such a great songwriter. And you were like, I love this. I love the way this, and you like really broke it down on a level that I couldn't even comprehend. And I'm like, this guy is special. Like he sees music way different than anybody else does. And he appreciates everything. He doesn't just like appreciate one style of music. And for someone who's 17 or 16 and from a small town and he's got kind of a closed mind to everything, you just had your eyes wide open to so many different things. And I always thought that was so cool.
Thanks, man. I mean, that means a lot to me. I think first and foremost, I'm just a music lover, and that's always been my thing. I was definitely closed-minded about some things. Like I think then I probably would have turned my nose up at anything remotely related to like country music, but now like I listen to plenty of that too. I just don't give a shit. If there's something interesting happening or good music ideas, then I'm all in.
So let's talk about Enemy Airship a little bit again. Um, so who were the other guys in your band? Let's talk about them.
Yeah, yeah. So, drummer Logan Epps. I've known Logan since we were little kids. I had a neighbor, Clay Counts, and he would always talk about this guy. His friend, like I knew of Logan before I met him, this is before I was a musician at all, but I've just known Logan forever. We were in marching band together, in the drum line, and, Logan was just obviously a very good musician early on before he had even started playing in bands. And him and Michael actually would play together like in sort of like a second wave type emo band. So they've been playing together for much longer than I've been playing with either of them. Michael and I started playing together after we went away to college. Like we broke up 5 Seconds of Goodwill. A bunch of us went to Mizzou. Chris went to Webster, and me and Michael and Zach and Chuck started a band called the Projectors. Eventually, I left Mizzou and came back, and I wasn't in a band for years. I just recorded shit in my bedroom, and at some point, me and Zach and Michael were just like, let's start something. Let's just do instrumental music. Like, I don't want to sing. I don't want to be like, oh, Zach just sings. Like, I want to be making instrumental music in my own right. And so we started a thing. And then Zach moved away to China for several years to like teach English or something like that. And so we just enlisted Logan, who was my roommate at the time. And that band ended up being Non-Returner, which was a band for a long time. That was a little bit more like, I mean, it was the aughts, and so everyone was sort of incorporating like electronic sounds into their indie rock, and that was like the style du jour. And at some point, like Michael was on guitar, he wasn't playing bass, so we would have just like a rotating cast of bass players, and it never totally stuck. We actually ended up playing at BOB-A-RINO'S during that era too. I think it was like 2008, and it was with the Firebird Suite. Um, so that band broke up in like 2011 or something, and then Michael and Logan and I were just like, let's strip this down and let's just make like rock music. And it ended up not being just rock music, but that's the lineup that's stuck. And it's the kind of thing too where it feels like it's difficult to bring anyone else into that fold because we've been playing together for so long that a lot of our communication just feels sort of subliminal, or like we're all just kind of uh, we're not saying things where we're just sort of like anticipating each other's moves and stuff. And so anytime we bring someone in, it's a little bit fucked up and weird. So we've just been a three piece for a while, which is why in the recordings we end up with all of these parts that are like not really playable by three people on a stage. So the live show ends up being a little bit stripped down or a little bit raw. We'll just play songs, a little bit more. We'll rock them out a little bit or just rearrange them. So I
I
don't know
mean,
if this is information that I'm a terrible interviewee
no,
or
you're not at all. This is good. It's so rare that you get people who you can get along with so well that you can play with them for 20 years, whether you're in a band with them full time or you're just jamming with them here and there. That's incredible. And I was so excited to see that that was the band, when I first like looked into Enemy Airship and I started listening to it, I couldn't believe that you guys have stuck together for so long. And it shows in the records because the music and the songs are really solid. And I think it's a lot of people don't understand how important that is. There are so many bands that get a new drummer or a new bass player or whatever, and it just never sounds like the same band, and you want to keep sounding like you sound. And if someone changes or you bring somebody in, it can really not only wreck the chemistry, I feel like, but it can wreck the sound.
for sure. Or if you just don't get along from the start, sometimes that tension makes for really good albums, but it's like you're on borrowed time. That's going to fall apart at some point, and then you're going to be Oasis and, have a reunion tour that people like, I can't believe these guys aren't ripping each other's throats out on stage. Maybe they have already. I'm not keeping up with that.
So over the years, you've played a lot of shows. I know you guys did a lot in Columbia, Missouri when you were there. What are some of the more memorable shows you played, or some of the bands you played with that you really just enjoyed, and it was more like a dream come true, or just a great show?
Yeah, so there's a band that I really love called Deer Hunter, and the guitarist from Deer Hunter has a project called Lotus Plaza. We
So
played
is
with
that DEER or
Yeah.
DEAR?
Yeah, not the Deer Hunter like DEAR, but Deer Hunter like Bradford Cox and Locket Punt and stuff. It's like sort of hypnagogic, like sort of
Yep.
dream poppy indie rock. Locket Punt's solo band, and then there was another guitarist in the band, and his project also was on that bill. We also got to play with Cursive, which they have. I forget who. I think someone's like wife works at the university or something, so they end up or they did at the time end up playing there a lot. And so like kind of strong ties to Columbia, Missouri, but getting to play with Cursive was like, I don't know, just a dream come true as somebody who, like Domestica was just extremely important to me whenever I was like trying to figure out how I wanted to write music or how I wanted to approach lyrics, how close I wanted to allow them to get to me and like my actual perspective versus just like uh, layering on figurative language so that I'm sort of removed from it. There was, hearing Tim just kind of lay it all out there and being like, yeah, you totally can do this, and it's not cringe if you do it in a way that it like is artful. So playing with them was a treat. We got to play with Joan of Arc, which was awesome. Um, I don't know. Some my favorite shows though end up being like house shows, just like shows where there's not a stage. You're like face to face with the people watching it. The room just kind of goes crazy. You can feel it more. It's more visceral. I don't know. The DIY shows and the house shows kind of stand out to me more than like the big venue shows. Not to say that I don't love playing at like nice venues. And this show coming up, like off Broadway, is one of the best rooms in town. Just a treat every time we play there. So, but there's an energy that you just can't get whenever you're like 4 feet off the ground and everyone else is down on the ground and they're not like, you can't smell the BO in the room, you know? That's important.
Absolutely. And I think what we're celebrating on Saturday, November 29th, the Class of Three reunion with you guys, with Bi-Level, with Last Flight Home, with a Symphony of Punches, with Moon, is that exact thing. You know, we're celebrating those times of, you know, being on the patio at Bob-A-RINO'S with all these great bands, you know, everybody from Silverstein to Fall Out Boy to Spitalfield, Hopes Fall, you know, and it was always one of those things where we would do the shows outside, but if we had weather, Bob was so cool,
Yeah,
we
man.
can move the shows inside and do them inside, and we'd have 200 people inside. The ovens would be cranking. It was like 130 degrees in that place. I'd be throwing pitchers of water on people, and you know, people just be having the best time of their life. I still think, you know, that building kind of somebody bought that building and it collapsed when they after they
Oh,
bought it,
shit.
and they had to just tear the whole thing down. And I remember back then I was like, man, this thing's gonna fall apart. Like,
Yeah.
and we had those loud bands in there, and everyone was jumping around. And I remember being on that top floor of that apartment because there was Bob lived above it in an
Yeah,
apartment,
yeah. I've been up there a few times.
and I was like, this is not stable. So anyway, those shows, those floor shows, house shows, whatever you want to call them, barn shows, those are so memorable for so many reasons. And I hope that even at a venue, a nice venue like off Broadway, that we can, you know, get that feeling back, get that vibe back a
Yeah.
little bit. It's, you know, it's a smaller venue. And, you know, it's not the Pageant, it's not Delmar Hall or anything like that. But you know, there's also the area where everyone can hang out and have a good time. And I
Yeah.
just I think it's so rare at our age to get to have a time where like no one wants to go to their high school reunion. Nobody want. I haven't
No,
gone to one of those things.
me neither.
And like, but I would love to get back with the people that I grew up going to shows with.
Well,
And
we have music in common. Like that's completely different to me. Like going and seeing randos from your graduating class. Sure, I'd love to see some of those people, but like it could be fucked up in a lot of ways. But going to this, it's like we all love music. We're all sort of like adjacent to making music or just actually making music. This place is special to us. Like that's, I don't know. It now in 2025, I just feel like everyone is so atomized and there's such a lack of community everywhere. And there's like a real problem with third spaces disappearing and people just being like spiritually lonely and like, you know, you have your friends, but you're talking on social media and texting and shit, and it's not the same. And to actually like bring everyone together, like that's kind of our birthright as human beings to get together and dance and play music. Like that's so important. And like to have it be tied to just to have all this history involved, like that's really something extremely special. And also just to celebrate the place and the guy. Like, I don't know, just I think about this all the time. Like Bob was selling New York pizza in Farmington, Missouri, which you know now everybody kind of the internet, everyone has the internet, everyone's looking at food blogs and food pictures on Instagram and shit. Everyone knows what New York pizza is. Back then it's like I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen a pizza that sliced the size of my head. He's bringing this special thing to Farmington, and then he's like opening it up to teenagers to play music. Like the gift that that guy brought us with his generosity of opening up that place to us, like that's so special. So yeah, I don't know.
I think, you know, and thank you for saying that. And I agree with you. I think at the time I was just like trying to make things happen. You know, we were trying to put as many shows in there as we can and bring in as much business as possible. but I never really got to like look back on it like I can now and say, wow, like there isn't one person, one adult that would have let us do that to his business. And I mean,
Right.
yeah, he probably made some money, which I'm happy for him, but like he let us just go in there and like have the most fun. And no one ever caused problems. We never had any issues. Like
Yeah.
it was just a really good time. And I mean, not to mention the pizza was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Um,
And I also think about this too. I remember it was whenever I left Mizzou, I moved back to Farmington for a little bit, and I was like coming out of 214, of course, the liquor store, and like you're going around flyering, and you hand me a flyer, and it's like I think it was like Fallout Boy was on it, and I'm just thinking like, how is this even possible in Farmington, Missouri? And then it was just like band after band, like huge bands. How did you do that? How did you get these people to play in Farmington,
you
Missouri? Like
know,
not once, but like some of these people came back a bunch of times.
I'll try and make this short because I could go on a rant about this, and I want it not a good rant, but like I don't want to take up too much time with this. It just kind of happened. It was like I got one agent's number, right? And then another agent called me. And then another agent called me and was like, "Oh, this place in Farmington is doing shows." So then I just said yes a lot. You
Yeah.
know, it was like, and the bands that we booked, it was so organic. Like there was no, it wasn't like I knew somebody special. Um, it was like, oh, Calico Systems touring with Spitalfield and Fear Before the March of Flames. Okay, well let's bring them in. I'm buddies with those guys, and I have 500 of these samplers with Silverstein and Spitalfield all over them because their records are coming out, and no one knows who they are yet. But their records are coming out on Victory Records, and they're both going to get big. And I passed out all those, and then it was just like every time I just got lucky. It was just, hey, you want to do the show? Under Oath was the same thing. I got a message from Spitalfield. They were like, "Hey, we have a date here with Under Oath, and we have nowhere to play. Can we come play BOB-A-RINO'S?" And it's like, sure. I didn't know Under Oath was gonna become like one of the biggest bands of that genre. It just same with Fallout Boy. Fallout Boy was they were just another band that I booked with their agent, and I think I paid him like $300 to play, and they were gonna come back and play again that summer twice, and they ended up getting picked up by Yellow Card and taking on tour with Yellow Card. But yeah, it just kind of it was just so organic, and I think people just I look back at it and like, I've been doing this for a long time, and I consider myself somewhat of a professional now.
Yeah, I would say you're not somewhat of a professional, you're a bona fide professional.
But I look back and it like it kills me a little bit inside. It also makes me smile a lot, and I think about like we did those shows with like speakers on sticks, like we didn't have like we were like trying to find different circuits outlets so so it didn't like break every time.
God, in that old ass building too.
And it did. We'd have to like go and replug it and set a switch. And this happened during many of these shows. But I just think people love the genuine fact that the kids, when they came to the show, they were enthusiastic. They bought the merch. They talked to the bands, and it was just a really good time. It wasn't people standing there with their arms folded. They were getting into what was going on, and it just,
Yeah. You had to imagine how grateful people were that like, oh, I've heard this band, I've been listening to them all week. Like now they're coming to Farmington, Missouri, and I just have to like go downtown to see them. Like imagine playing to an audience that grateful to see you. That's got to be huge for those bands too.
yeah. And it was crazy because we booked that Silverstein show because I ended up getting a gift from some guy that was doing shows, and he's like, "I don't want to do this show," and it was something at the Creepy Crawl, and I ended up taking it over and just running the show, but it was with that agent. And then he's like, "I got this band Silverstein, would you want to book them?" Sure, whatever. I didn't know who the fuck they were, and they sent me all those samplers, and Spitalfield was on the other side of that sampler. And then after they played, I got a phone call about Calico System touring with Spitalfield. I know I'm kind of repeating myself,
Yeah.
but it was just like I knew that all these kids have already listened to these two songs from this band, and it was like built in. Like they knew who they were, even though no one else knew who they were in the town. A lot of kids, this was the only CD they had. They were
Yeah.
probably playing this all day long. So I just got lucky. I mean, I tried my hardest. I always tell the story. I I called Justin Mank, who was like at the time he plays Not Waiting but Drowning, but at the
Yeah,
time he was like the booker in St. Louis. Like he booked so many good shows. And I was like, hey, I got this offer for this band Shai Hulud, which is like this historic hardcore band
yeah,
from New York. He's like, it's too much money, Joey. Don't do the show. And I'm like, fuck you. Like, I'm going to do the show. It'll be fine. Like, these kids are going to come out. And I kid, it was on a Tuesday. It was like September. And anyway, needless to say, about 35 to 40 people showed up. And I paid this band a lot of money. And I didn't have that money. So, and they had a big agent who I know to this day, I'm friends with him. Um, so I called that agent and I was like, I'm going to give him half the money now. He's like, that's fine. Send me the half of the money later. And I didn't have a job. Like I worked at Bob's. I was a pizza delivery guy, I had a really shitty car. I sold my car to pay that
God
band the
damn.
rest of their money.
Holy shit, man.
So there was a few years back where they did like a documentary about Bob's and they never asked me and it was fine. I was glad that someone was doing something in memory. But I remember this kid being like, oh, like it was so popular the bands played for free. And I'm like fuck they did. I sold my car to pay that band.
Oh my God.
It was like a $400 car, it was on its last leg, but I still needed something to drive. And then I went on
Yeah.
tour for a while, but like that for me too, like I know I'm interviewing you and I don't want to take up too much of your time.
No, I mean, this is the history of the place we're celebrating. So
I got to make it somewhat of a career, like I got to go on tour and like when you grow up in a small town and you don't know anything about anything and you're young and you're just trying to like find who you are to get to go on tour and go all over the country. I went to every single state almost, and like I would leave one band and another band would pick me up and be like, come on tour with us. You work your butt off. You're not going to make a lot of money, but like you'll get to go on these cool tours. We play like a lot of these tours with bands like Under Oath and Norma Jean, Spitalfield, Fear Before the like Gatsby's American Dream. I got to tour with so many great bands and it really made me grow up quick. Like it makes you realize like how big this world is and how small your world is when you grow up in
yeah,
a small town. But
yeah,
not to discount anybody that grows up in a small town. It really helped me grow and helped me come with a career and to see so many people get so excited about us doing what we're doing at off Broadway on the 29th. It really makes me feel good because it's not really about me, it's not about the bands, it's just about that time and how special it was.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I also think about whenever I was starting to make music in Farmington and seeing bands like I remember Not Waving But Drowning being like touring with bigger bands at the time and like touring all around and thinking like, oh yeah, you can actually do this shit if you play your cards right, if you're from this area. Like this isn't a dead end. Like this doesn't have to be a backwater place to come from. And I remember every time like we'd play at the Creepy Crawl, anytime like they'd find out we were from Farmington, they're like, oh, do you know Calvin? Like basically regionally famous. And it's like, he's just a guy from Farmington. Like your world is so small, but the world is so small. And I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. And I always think it's so funny to me, Calvin, he did all these different tours and he's such a talented drummer. And then you got Tim Hardy who toured with My Chemical Romance and Under Oath. And, he's done so many good projects over the years, the drummer from Bi-Level who grew up in Farmington. And then, a guy that doesn't really get mentioned, I don't know if you know him or not, but Gabe Usry, who he's been in tons of big punk bands in St. Louis. He's toured the world. He plays in a band with Dan Vapid from Screeching Weasel for the Methadones. And he also produces like a ton of bands in St. Louis. He has a studio and he's from Farmington.
Yeah.
He was a few years older than us. He played in a bunch of bands when we like punk bands before we were, really going to shows yet. But it just blows my mind and you're in that group of people too, of how many people from this small ass town went on to do such big things with their music careers.
Yeah. I think about this too. Just like the people that make it out of Farmington, or I guess make it out is a weird way to put it, but there's still a lot of like really incredible musicians and artists that come out of that area. I don't know if it's the radiation or the lead or what, but it's I don't know.
It's no, it's
There's something
special.
special about that place. I think maybe I'm biased because I have, lead and chat poison from growing up there, but
No, absolutely. So, we could probably talk all day.
sure.
But obviously, um, you know, Saturday, November 29th, Class of '03 reunion,
Hell,
Bob-A-RINO'S reunion, off Broadway. What are you looking forward to the most? And how excited are you to play the show?
I mean, I'm fucking stoked. For all the reasons that I just said. Also, the room is wonderful. I'm going to be seeing a lot of people I haven't seen in years that I love very much. I'm stoked to see Last Flight Home play again. I'm stoked to see just those guys again. I'm going to give them a big hug, especially Rusty. I don't think I've seen Ben in probably 20 years, more than 20 years. So, um, yeah, I don't know. It's just going to be a really special night. Um, Gonna try not to get verklempt on stage.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, man. It was a pleasure talking to you. And
Same.
like I said, I can't wait to see you guys live. And thank you again for being part of the show.
Hell yeah. Thanks for having me.
All right, man. Take it easy, buddy.
You too.